The year is 2009. Poker Face is topping the charts everywhere. Obama is president. And for some reason, everyone is really excited to see Avatar. A movie that dares to ask the dangerous questions like, what if Pocahontas, but in space? And how bangable can we make the aliens? Well, my friends, as you know, we talk about Avatar a lot on this channel, and I was thinking to myself, why do we restrict ourselves to one type of Avatar? Why not be more inclusive? And so, in preparation for Avatar 2 Electric Boogaloo, I went to re-watch the first film in theaters to see how it measured up 13 years later. And I can tell you unequivocally that it is one of the most films ever made. And after this, I am reviewing The Way of Water over on the second channel to tell you definitively if it is better, the same, or worse than this film. The link to that video on the second channel, To the Future, is up in the corner of the video right now or down in the description below. Do you remember what it was like on that fateful 2009 night? I remember that everyone was going to the midnight premiere, me too, because this was meant to be the cinematic event of a lifetime. But why? Why was it gonna be like that? Well, Avatar had this weird mystique around it for being James Cameron's first film since Titanic and being one of the most expensive films ever made at the time, having the most incredible effects that have ever been seen before in film. And it is true, credit where credit is due, they revolutionized visual effects with new technologies that they invented purely for the film. And it is the first film in my memory where the motion capture visual effects looked really good, especially in the face. Honestly, it's kinda hard to understate just how much hype there was for this film at the time, or not hype, but curiosity, because it was everywhere. It was on every billboard, a trailer before every film, on all the adverts, all the time, everywhere. There was an insane marketing campaign around it. Like, even people who didn't watch sci-fi films like this knew about it and thought it was going to be good and turned up to the midnight premieres. Because we were told so much over and over how unique and different and profound and groundbreaking this film was going to be. So you just kind of bought into it. You gotta remember, this was also back in an era where there were leaps and bounds being made in visual effects being more realistic and beautiful, and that would be a reason that people would go to watch these films, especially when blended with filmed live action scenes. Let's just say we have come a long way since Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Entire laboratory.
The fact that Avatar looked seamless at the time was a big deal. Whereas now, the fast food filmmaking of Marvel and Star Wars and Disney means that the visual effects industry is getting screwed over and people just take them for granted. People expect seamless visual effects now and don't understand how much time and effort that really takes. There's this recurring joke where directors will just say, you know, we'll fix it in post, when what they really mean is, hey, we'll just enslave a bunch of visual effects artists to fix whatever I couldn't be bothered doing at the time. That hype was definitely because, you know, Avatar was from a different era. And I know that part of the magic for me, for New Zealand, was that Weta Workshop did the effects. We did them, so there was the sense of ownership for our tiny little country. Recognition that we don't often get. So I and thousands of others rocked up to our local Hoyts Theatre that midnight. We got our snacks, we got our tickets, and we put on the worst, quote, innovation ever made in cinema history. 3D glasses. Now, the rest of this video will be in 3D, so please put on your glasses. I want you to have the full experience of this video, and I've decided to make that impossible unless you spend more money. As you know, everything is automatically made better in 3D, and certainly does not make it worse, because if it irritates your eyes and you have to take them off, everything becomes a little blurry. I don't have any 3D glasses, so lucky for us, 3D glasses, like the Mummy Cinematic Universe, have fortunately been consigned to the trash heap of movie history. But apparently, James Cameron is single-handedly determined to drag us back into that blurry hellscape by releasing Avatar 2: The Way of Water in 3D. And I'm sure it will marginally increase the enjoyment of all 2 people who like 3D films. And I hope to hell it doesn't do what he did the first time, and every single film that followed is released in 3D just because it makes more money, and certainly not because the film ever needs it. There's a bit of a running joke that nobody can name the Avatar characters off the top of their head. Go on, can you? Any of them? Like seriously, can you name any of the main characters off the top of your head? That despite grossing $2 billion and being watched by millions of people across the globe, the weird thing is, nobody loves this film. Like, do you know anyone who, when you ask them what their favorite film is, they look you dead in the eye and they say, the 2009 hit James Cameron 3D extravaganza, Avatar? Do you believe that those people exist, even hypothetically? Like, Star Wars The Phantom Menace is not a good film, but I don't have any problem believing that it is someone's favorite film out there. But having watched the film twice now, I think I can fairly lay claim to the title of Avatar's #1 fan. So, I can tell you after extensive research that the main character's name... hang on. Main character in Avatar. Jake Sully. Jake Sully is his name. The film feels like James Cameron looked at the hero's journey and took it as an instruction manual. The story is predictable, and watching it again all these years later, it definitely stood out to me more that the characters are offensively bland. Like, Jake Sully has no real flaws, not ones that play any interesting role in the narrative. He has no character traits or quirks that make him interesting to listen to or watch do things. At the start, he's kinda just this himbo who doesn't really care about the science or the Na'vi, but then he does, and he chooses them over the corporation he works for. But on rewatching it, it really stood out to me how not only have we seen this story 1,000 times before, but Avatar isn't even a particularly interesting rendition of it. Like, think about The Last Samurai, which tells the same sort of story. It's about a military man working for the colonial powers who eventually goes and joins the enlightened spiritual native people. But they give Tom Cruise that really memorable scene where he demands one of the Japanese soldiers he's been training to try shoot him in the head to demonstrate how not ready the Japanese army is to face the samurai. Avatar never gives Jake extremely memorable main character Sully any scene or opportunity like this where he can say something or do something interesting, and even when he is in an interesting scene, the interesting thing is never Jake extremely memorable main character Sully. Like when he tames the pterodactyl thing, the bonding with the hair and the animal design is cool, but it's not Jake extremely memorable main character Sully being interesting there. James Cameron seemed to want him to be this kind of everyman character that everyone can identify with, but he went so far with that he becomes entirely undefined and unmemorable. He never makes any engaging observations about the world, he never does anything unexpected, and he just parrots what everyone else around him is saying. Everything he does lacks subtlety. And this blandness extends to the world building of Pandora too, sadly. None of the animals in Pandora feel truly original. You know, the most common ones are these horses, which have 6 legs, but they are still very distinctly horses in their design. There are these titanotheres, which are basically just rhinos, but with hammerheads. There are these viper wolves, which are just hyenas, but with 6 legs. Even operating in a pack. Even the Na'vi could be basically described as humans, but tall. It's always this something you know, but this, an exaggerated feature or whatnot. And this kinda sucks because I remember how much this film was sold on how unique and original it was gonna be and how much love and effort and time went into the creation of this world and all of these creatures. It's not to say that there are no unique elements, but it was very much sold on being this incredibly new, original world, but it is intensely familiar. It's got nothing on like the alien creatures that we see in Arrival or the richness of the world of Arrakis and Dune. Like, the Na'vi language is legitimately one of the only fictional languages that you can actually speak. It's one of the most complete dictionary fictional languages in the world. That is awesome. but the film is still pretty milquetoast. Now, normally I wouldn't care. Like, every single planet in Stargate looks basically like Northern California, and they're always like, wow, look, alien world. But their budget was tiny, and they were never trying to sell themselves as, you know, like the greatest cinematic sci-fi experience ever made. And it wasn't boasting about being the most in-depth, original sci-fi world ever made. Pandora is very much an in-depth world, but that depth is just kind of except for the floating mountains. I loved those. I will die on this hill. They look awesome. They were cool. It doesn't want to do anything that might change a formula or be unexpected. And, like, it's also because of this that the film is never offensively bad. It is never Rise of Skywalker levels of terrible.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
It is, in every way, incredibly functional. But that is the word I'm going to use for it. Functional. Keep in mind, I know very little about filmmaking, but I don't think anyone's going to deny that it looks fantastic. Nothing is ever visually confusing or filmed badly, and it delivers on action scenes. It is competent. It is functional, and we should be able to recognize that. But it's still pretty bland thematically and narratively, so it just doesn't have the depth to make that spectacle meaningful. And I think people remember that a lot more, which is why when I look back on it now, I just feel meh. It painstakingly works to keep the consistent level of being perfectly okay, rarely rising above that or falling below it. I'll be the first to admit that Stephen Lang as gruff old military man with balls is always fun to watch, and Sigourney Weaver too, but they alone can't carry the film. I will say that 13 years later, I definitely cringed with watching Jake extremely memorable main character Sully rallying the Na'vi to fight the evil megacorporation. The white savior complex is a common criticism of these types of films, where the non-native person comes to join the natives and then becomes better at nativing than all of the native people, and then they lead the natives, and they only manage to survive because of the heroic, kind, non-native person. So it is very cringe when he cries out to them all, "This is our land!" when, and I looked this up, he has only spent 3 months with the Na'vi. 3 months. And somehow, in that time, he manages to tame the biggest, baddest bird that only the best of the natives in all of their history can. He ascends to become one of the leaders and marries the princess. It's a thing, and these sort of details didn't really stick out to me when I was around 15. You know, the film is not subtle in its themes, but it has definitively earned its place as a meme. And there is nothing wrong with just sitting down and enjoying that for what it is. Except I need to apologize, because I lied to you before, when I said that I couldn't find anyone whose favourite film in the entire world was the 2009 James Cameron 3D extravaganza hit Avatar. Well, I could. Let me introduce you to the die-hard Avatar fan community you can find mostly scattered across comment sections and Reddit posts. Could go down as the greatest sci-fi film of all time, unless one of the sequels top it. Without any doubt, the best movie of all time. Avengers needed hype to become one. Avatar just released silently and spoke for itself standing alone. One of the most ambitious and futuristic movie. Just the most ambitious and futuristic movie. Can't believe that this masterpiece is now in second place, still the best movie of all time. Like, I do not want to bash people for their love of the 2009 James Cameron 3D extravaganza hit Avatar, but I do have to wonder what types of films these people are watching. To call it the greatest sci-fi film ever made when we have the likes of most other sci-fi films, or the most ambitious and futuristic, there is this group of people who tend to only watch, you know, the big blockbuster hits like Marvel and Star Wars and Disney and not much else, and that's fine. If that's what they love, all power to them. But it does mean they have a very particular measure of what makes a good film, and if they're comparing the sci-fi of Avatar to the sci-fi of the Marvel series, then I can maybe see how they'd arrive at that. I just have to remind myself this is all very subjective. But reading through all these comments and Reddit posts, I started to piece together that there was something of a hashtag drama in the 2009 hit 3D extravaganza James Cameron film Avatar community. You know how PewDiePie and T-Series had that fight to see who could get to 100 million first? Well, I started to realize that the Avatar community was really invested in this fight for which film is the highest grossing film of all time, Avatar or Avengers Endgame. Like, there's this meme in the Reddit, you know, the "you took everything from me" meme, but Thanos has an airbender tattoo. But all of the comments think that this is about a conflict between Endgame and Avatar, the blue people Avatar, because none of them made the connection to The Last Airbender. The comments are constantly comparing Avengers to Marvel. I was really confused by this one comment where someone said, "Avatar has more than heroes and villains could offer. The story of a habitat, a generation, and a survival. That's why this film is special." Till I realized that this was about Marvel. The Reddit seems weirdly obsessed with disproving the idea that Avatar had no cultural legacy, that it left no footprint, but they mostly do this by showing how much money it made, especially compared to some Marvel film, which is a very interesting metric to use. All in all though, it is very funny because I'm pretty sure that the Marvel community doesn't even think about Avatar as its competition, so this is just like, you know, one person racing another person and that person doesn't even know that they're in a race at the moment. But as I was trying to figure out, you know, why these people love it so much, something kept on coming up. They just love the world. It's as simple as that. They want to go there and be there. They think it's beautiful. They want to be one of the Na'vi. They want to bond with the animals. This is a totally fair feeling. Like, Pandora is a lot of things, but beautiful is one of the ones that stands out most, and it's a very common feeling for us nerds to have. I remember how much I wanted to just be part of the world of Doctor Who so desperately, or of Aragon, or of The Lord of the Rings. And even if the story isn't necessarily great, you can still be enraptured by the world and want to be a part of it. And I respect that, and you should too. One of the most beautiful things about fiction is how they let us experience these feelings so intensely, feelings that we might not otherwise have. I can get behind that. But that aside, the story of the 2009 3D extravaganza hit James Cameron film Avatar does get weirder. Because I did a little bit of background reading, you see, about how James Cameron didn't just want to create an extremely in-depth world people could be a part of, but he wanted to create extremely sexable aliens. You might think that Avatar is just a love story between Jake, extremely memeable main character Sully, and Neytiri, but in reality, it was all part of expanding James Cameron's wank bank. We just kept asking ourselves, well, would you want to do it? And our all-male crew of artists would basically say, no, take the gills out. Which, fair, gills aren't for everyone, though the popularity of tentacles may suggest otherwise. He would then go on to say, there is this classification above heart, which is smoking heart. My blue aliens are smoking heart. She was specifically designed to appeal to guys so they wouldn't be able to control themselves. They will have actual lust for a character that consists of pixels of ones and zeros. She's gotta have tits, even though that makes no sense whatsoever because of her race. The Na'vi, they aren't placental animals. And that is, objectively, a very weird thing to say. Just imagining James Cameron watching The Smurfs and he goes, you know what, I want that, but hotter. The 2009 James Cameron 3D extravaganza hit film Avatar was big in every way that you could imagine it. It's expensive, it's epic, it is the most movie ever made. It does more of virtually everything than any other film in whatever way it can, and it is a fine thing to sit down and enjoy just because you can, because why not? But if it does go down in history, then I think it's going to go down as one of the most movies ever made. It was an event, but that event wasn't the story or themes or characters. The event was that it was an event. And hey, 39 million people have watched The Way of Water, and that's gotta mean something, right? But I didn't think that the trailer did it quite justice, you know? And after watching it and becoming Avatar's #1 fan worldwide, I think we need to re-edit the trailer to show just what it really is, so that it can really be recognized for being the most movie ever made. This summer.
Mighty.
We cannot let you bring your war here.
Outcast. That's all they see.
I see you.